Thank you very much, Marianne. It's my pleasure to be here. I have to say I'm very excited to be on the stage with these three very successful executives. I think we're going to have a very interesting, entertaining, and educational hour talking with these three women. So first of all, I want to thank the Women in Business Committee for organizing this event. I know, since I'm on the executive committee here, that they didn't have a lot of time to do this, but it's come together very, very nicely. So Kitano-san and Marianne and the committee, thank you very much. This is just turning out to be a wonderful event. I'm very happy to be a part of it. Okay, so let's get into this now. The way this is going to work is I'm going to introduce each of our speakers, and she's going to have a chance to discuss with all of you about their history in their industry and how they grew their careers and so forth. So they'll do that in turn. We'll have each speaker have 10 minutes to be able to deliver that. After that is over, I have a couple of questions that I'll pose, and depending on how we're doing time, I know that you would like to ask questions yourself. If we do that, it'll be quite limited since we only have an hour for this. But that's overall how we intend to run this particular session. So with that introduction, let me go ahead and announce our first speaker. So we are very fortunate to have Takagi-san here. She's a long-term employee of Procter & Gamble. She joined in 1990, and she's currently the manager for the Shiga plant. So she is a Japanese female plant manager. And I've been in Japan quite a while. This is very, very rare. So we have a unique opportunity to talk to someone, a woman who is in typically a male role. Okay, so this is in Shiga, and the Shiga plant mainly produces skincare products and cosmetics. So in her current role, she manages all aspects of the plant, including safety, quality, cost control, cash, and organizational capability. She's also involved at the prefectural level with the Shiga Cosmetics Industry Association. So as I mentioned, she joined P&G in 1990, so 25 years. She's had a wide variety of different positions while she's been at P&G. She did strategic development for the fabric care category, and she's managed several other critical supply chain interventions for baby care as well. Hair care and feminine care, those three areas. So she's also lived abroad in Singapore. So she's worked as an international executive as well. So I'm very, very pleased to welcome her, and she'll be our first speaker for this session.
Very much for introducing me. I'm Takagi. I'm from Procter & Gamble. I'm not ready to, I'm not trying to introduce my company. I believe most of you know about Procter & Gamble. It's a consumer goods company. I joined the company in 1990. So I stayed in one company for 25 years. You may ask this question, isn't it boring to stay in one company for 25 years? The answer is no. The P&G gave me a lot of different opportunities in my career life in the last 25 years. I've never bored with my work. So I stayed in the company for 25 years. I want to share how I made my dream come true. My career dream was to be a plant manager. So I wanted to talk about this and how I made it through. I started with headquarters, sitting in the headquarters as a product supply category planner who manages cost and cash, sourcing strategy or capacity planning, sitting in the GO headquarters in Kobe. But basically, my job was to give the directions and orders to the multiple manufacturing plants. Okay? That was my role for the first 10 years. And I really enjoyed the work. The company valued me, gave me a big responsibility and a lot of autonomy. So I really enjoyed the work in the first 10 years. However, I started feeling I missed something very critical. Because I was in the product supply organization, the core part of the product supply is obviously manufacturing. And I didn't have any manufacturing experience at the time. So 10 years after I joined the company, I asked my boss to consider me for one of the roles in the manufacturing plants. But at that time, that was 15 years ago, year 2000. as many of we talked already, at that time, nobody believed, I don't say nobody, but not a lot of people believed that women could be successful in manufacturing plants. Actually, even in Procter & Gamble, no women managers were in the leadership teams in the plants in Japan at that time. So it was not easy for me to get an assignment in manufacturing plant at that time. So I talked to my boss. This is something I really want to do. Can you consider me to a role in a manufacturing plant? Originally, he said no. He didn't have, he was very supportive. He was very nice boss for me, but he was very caring. And he was trying to protect me from a very too challenging assignment because he didn't want to put me for the set for the failure. So he said, how you manage your family? You are married, you have kids. How you go to plant? And I said, I decided to split my family. My husband agreed. Still my boss said, no, 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 you shouldn't do that. No, you shouldn't do that. So I said, no, I decided, I want to do that. And my family is supportive. Can you consider? And he kept saying no. And so I stuck and I talked to my boss's boss. Can you help me? Because my boss is very supportive in a different context, right? So I didn't like the idea. So my boss's boss was very supportive, but I talked to my mentors, I talked to my seniors in the company, and I asked for support. I couldn't make this by myself. And so it actually took 5 years to make that happen. I started asking for a job in manufacturing, and I was finally sent to a Takasaki plant, which is in Gunma Prefecture. This is not commuting distance, so we finally ended up with splitting family, but that happened in calendar year 2005, okay? And my big learning out of this experience is, if you have something you really want to do, don't give up. It's not easy, but don't give up until you really get it. And to do that, obviously, you have to believe in yourself, and you have to be self-confident. But at the same time, you have a lot of supporters around you, so leverage your supporters, and they will support you. And when you get the support you need, one tip here is, when I asked for support from my seniors or my bosses, I really articulated what kind of support I need, because they don't know how they can support me. Because if I generally say, could you support me? Everybody says, yes, of course, I can support you, I love you. But they don't do anything specific, because I'm not specific enough to tell them what they needed to do for me. So for example, to my boss, I really said, please support me in the talent council discussion. Please keep me as a candidate for the manufacturing roles. Please don't delist me. Even you are concerned about my family, please don't delist. Please keep me on the list. That's the specific thing I asked my boss to do for me. Okay? And when I'm really struggling, when I'm stressed out, I need somebody to listen to, right? To talk to. In that case, I asked one of my mentors just to listen to me. Don't try to solve my problem. I just want to talk about my problem with tears. Please just listen to me. That's how I utilized my mentors, sometimes, not very often. But you really want to articulate what kind of support you need from your supporters to get the support you need. Okay, this is a very big learning throughout this career succession planning discussion with my managers. And finally, 2 years ago, I got this assignment as a Shiga plant manager. So my dream has come true 2 years ago. And but when I was in Takasaki 10 years ago, I already made up my mind to be a plant manager in the future. I set my career goal very, very clearly when I was in Takasaki. That's also very helpful because I declared that I want to be a plant manager in the future. I was not very confident. I didn't know if I could do that or not in the future. regardless, I declared my career dream. And this is good because my supporters, they tried to help me by talking about what takes you to be the plant manager. So I received a lot of helpful tips, perspectives from my supporters how to be the plant manager in the future. So one of the tips I got from one of my mentors at that time was, if you want to be a plant manager, typically you manage a big organization with so many people, so you want to have some human resource skills. That will be a big help for you. So I took HR assignment after Takasaki. And I spent my 2 years in human resources to acquire HR skills and experiences. That was very helpful. Without those experiences, I couldn't be the plant manager like this today. And regarding work-life balance standpoint, only one thing I keep in mind is full on, full off. You know, I'm a working mom, busy schedule. And one thing I'm trying to do every day is full on, full off. When I'm at work, I really focus on my work. When I'm at home with my kids, I really focus on my family. Okay? The worst thing happening on me is worrying about my family at work or worrying about my work at home. That's a very, very disruptive for me. So that's full on, full off mindset really helps me improve my productivity. Okay? Excuse me. Sorry about this. So in summary, very short speech, in summary, 3 tips here. If you have something you really want to do, don't give up. Believe in yourself, be self-confident, and then you can make your dream come true. Second tip, as I talked, if you want to get the support you need, please articulate what kind of support you need from your supporters. Then you will get the support you need. The third one, full on, full off. Don't try to do multitasking. Multitasking is the enemy of the productivity or effectiveness. So focus one thing at a time to improve your productivity. These are the 3 things I wanted to talk. I'm very, very happy to answer any of the questions from you. So let's talk more later after the 2 more speakers talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting. We're going to go to our next speaker now, and Aaron Nolan is our next speaker, and you've been at your company for 24 years. Almost the same. You're still senpai. You have 25 years. So Aaron Nolan joined Gap in 1991 as assistant store manager at the Gap brand, after which she progressed through many different roles within the company, including IT and inventory management. She continued to increase her responsibilities within Banana Republic, which is a subsidiary of the Gap, and Banana Republic Factory Store. So she served as a vice president of inventory management, including inventory management and assortment planning for the Banana Republic Factory Store here in Japan. So she was recently promoted. She was appointed in October 2014 as vice president and general manager for the Gap Specialty Japan. In addition, she assumed the role of representative director of Gap Japan in December 2014. So she is a graduate with a BA in economics from Binghamton University, that's SUNY. And she also attended the general management program at Cambridge University. So with that, I introduce to you Ms. Nolan.
Hello, everyone. I can't tell you how excited I am to actually be able to be up here to talk to you. I was able to attend the Women in Business Summit in Tokyo as well, and so it's actually really exciting to do both. As you heard, I just recently moved to Japan, so everything is a new experience for me these days. But I am loving every minute of it, I will tell you. So I wanted to start out by giving you a little background about myself. Because I think it's almost interesting just to hear a little personal side before I get into work. I am the oldest of 3 girls. And growing up, it was important to both of my parents that their daughters grew up with an education and could make it on their own if they had to. It was extremely important for them that we were successful in no matter what we did. It didn't matter what it was, as long as it was something that could support us. Remember my father being so insistent I do something like computer science so I could actually pay the bills. But that is not what called to me as a professional. When I graduated college, I could not resist the Gap. It was a growing, vibrant, exciting retail company that I just wanted to be a part of. And I started in the stores, which is, I think, one of the hardest jobs in our company. You are with the customer. I mean, if you're in a store, you're thinking about your customer 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it's a great way to learn the ropes. But I wanted to do more. So I went to headquarters, which was in San Francisco. And I will tell you, I started the Gap because I just really admired the company for what they did in fashion. I stayed with the company because of how they support people's careers. There is such a built-up network and organization when it comes to developing talent that it makes it not easy, but it's certainly, if you really want to have a career there, it's there for you. And I think the interesting thing when we think about women, Gap was co-founded by a woman, Doris Fisher, and her husband started the company. And I think from day one, the company's always stood for opportunity and equality for everybody. So while I would say that I didn't necessarily face a lot of discrimination at work, you still, as a female, have to figure out how to navigate the politics. Because I would say inherently, political systems and companies sometimes can be very male-dominated. So you still have to learn how to work that for yourself. As you heard, I did work in quite a few different places in the company. There's so many different, the company is big enough that I always felt I was never bored. I totally agree with you. 24 years seems to have flown by. And I would tell you, I probably changed jobs every 2 years because there was always something else that was interesting. Now, I started to think to myself before I came here today about what are those things that I think really drive career development. And it's particularly the advice that I actually give someone who's kind of just starting out in their career. I would say number 1 is talk about what you want to do. I would say 5 years into the company, I had moved from the stores to headquarters, and then I was in an area for about 3 years, and I started to get kind of antsy. And you start thinking to yourself, because I was still young, thinking to myself, when is the next opportunity going to come along? I think it had dawned on me that that was my job. I had to speak up and say, this is what I'm interested in. I would like to do this. And I will tell you that the moment I started speaking up for what I wanted to do was then I was able to take control over where my career went. So that happened every time there was something that I thought, oh, I wanted to do, speak up. So definitely a piece of advice that I would wholeheartedly advise is it's so important to have that conversation. And it's not just with your supervisor. Talk to a mentor. Talk to other people, because I think the more people who know what your desired path is, the more likely it is to happen. I think second is to be open-minded. I think I never at the beginning would have imagined I would have worked in IT. I would have worked in outlet. I don't think I would have ever imagined living in Japan. But yet, just being open-minded to the fact that while at the end of the day, here's what I want to go, I'm not so tied to it has to be specifically this path. And I think by being open-minded, you're open-minded to opportunities, to projects, that bring experience that just keep building your career. Because I think what makes life really interesting is just having the well-roundedness of having different experiences. Because you never know. The next experience could turn you to an opportunity or an experience or a skill you didn't even know you had. So I would say definitely, when I was coming back from maternity leave, before I went on maternity leave, I talked to my boss at the time and I said, you know, I really want the next job when I come back. And that was about 5 months. I came back after 5 months, which is actually a pretty long time in the United States. I came back, I wanted to come back, and I wanted to do something different. And by having that conversation and telling many people that I was open to that, while I think my daughter was 3 weeks old when I got a phone call that said, there's an opportunity in Banana Republic Outlet. This is the perfect job for you. And so there I was. I think my husband actually brought my daughter to the office with me. He had her down in the parking garage while I'm like at interviews. But it wound up being the best. One of the best things I ever did was actually taking that opportunity. And I'll tell you in a moment why. But the third thing I wanted to share is my advice is to jump in and participate. What I do find sometimes with women is we often hesitate to sit at the table, allowing other people that we feel are more senior to sit ahead of us, to hesitate on volunteering for a project. Sometimes it's those projects that will get you the experience that will really, really help propel you to the next level. So the participation, I think, is big, because you never knew where the next new idea is going to come from. And it can come from a conversation that you might casually have at lunch, walking into work that day, or perhaps even like walking out the door. One thing I wanted to say just about why the outlet experience was a turning point for me, it was the first, I started working for someone new. And it was the first time I'd actually worked for someone who said to me, you have the skills, we have this business problem, I want you to solve it. And I thought, okay, here's my ideas. Let's talk about them. And she's like, no, no, no. I know you have the right instinct, and let's see what happens. You have the right instinct, you can make the decision, and let's come back. So it was a small thing, but we applied it right away, and we saw the results the week after. And it was a turning point for me, because it was the first time I had a leader be so empowering to me in terms of saying, I trust you, and you can make the decision. And it's only, I think, that when that empowerment comes that I started to develop the trust in my own decision-making skills. So that's also just, I think, just as leaders in more senior executive levels, I think we have to be able to think about it that way honestly, with men and women who are actually just coming up through the ranks. Being in this role and having worked for 24 years, it was, I want to say about 5 years ago when I started having to balance work and life with children. And I will tell you, I think when I had my child, I never imagined the kind of organizational skills that just came with her in my brain. I feel like almost I had another gear in my brain. But it still comes as a challenge. And I know when I talk to many women here in our company, what often comes up is, how do I balance the two? I feel like I have to make a decision either or. And I would say that there's a couple of ways that I make it work for myself. I will be honest, it was never really an option for me as an either or. I wanted to do both. I think flexibility goes a long way. Flexibility not only for myself and thinking it's never going to be perfect, and I have to be flexible about that. I have to be flexible with my work schedule and flexible about how things are just going to happen at home. Patience. I think I have another level of patience. And I think that helps not only at home, but also at work, because it just gives you a moment of just count to 3, and at the end of the day, it's not that bad. I'm also fortunate. I think it's a strong partnership, not only at work, but also at home. I don't think I could do the job I have now, or since becoming a mother, without actually having a strong partnership with my husband. He's always been really helpful, and it is an equal partnership at home with caregiving with the children. And I think finally, I do have to take care of myself. I know that can be hard, and I found it surprising, the statistic that Japanese women sleep less than any other woman in the world. That I find that if I don't sleep, I'm super cranky, and then I'm not effective at home or at work. So I know that I have to pay attention and I have to make sure that, honestly, it's so simple, but to say to myself, I got to get some exercise, because if I get some exercise, then I just am so much more relaxed and then I can get some sleep. I'd say all of these things have worked for me, and that's just my advice to any of you, just there at that level, trying to make that decision about how to continue my career, how to balance life and work. And I would say by doing those things, I've been fortunate enough to actually be here right now talking to all of you. So thank you.
Thank you very much. That was fantastic. Okay, we're going to now turn to our third speaker, Leanne Cutts. Leanne is the President and Representative Director for Mondelez Japan, and she serves as the President of Gum, Candy, and Powdered Beverages for Asia Pacific of Mondelez International. So she has dual responsibilities. That's for Japan and also for Asia Pacific as well. So I'm very happy for you to be here right now. So she was Vice President of Marketing for Mondelez International in Asia before moving to Tokyo in May 2013. Before joining the company in July 2011, she was in another industry, so a little bit different from our previous speakers. She was in the pharmaceutical industry, so we have many pharma people in our audience tonight. She was with GlaxoSmithKline and Consumer Healthcare. She worked there in various global and regional leadership roles across Asia Pacific, including Vice President and General Manager for North Asia. So she has lived in Sydney, in London, New Delhi, Hong Kong, and Singapore, in addition to now living in Japan. She started her career at Unilever in Australia. She has an MBA from the Australian Graduate School at the University of New South Wales, and her bachelor's degree is in economics from Sydney University. Ms. Cutts.
Thank you very much. And on behalf of the ACCJ, I'd also like to welcome you here today. It's great to be here. I'm also, another hat I wear is Vice President of the ACCJ, and I'm delighted to see so many people here today as well. It's great to be here in Kansai. Thank you very much for inviting me down here today. I wanted to share a quick story. I was recently hosting an event at my company for people from other companies and industries. And one of the women came up to me afterwards. It was a lunch and we were just chatting about different things. She came up to me afterwards and she said, you look quite happy. You don't look that stressed. And actually the people at your company look like they're enjoying themselves. And I went, yes, I hope so. And she said, well, because a lot of the advice I'd been given was that work is very serious. Work is very difficult, and you should not expect to be happy. And that really, really made me think, because who wants to be happy at work? Who in this room would like to be happy and passionate and love to turn up and do things that they want to do every day? I do. And made me really think about that, and also because for Mondelez, our mission is actually to create delicious moments of joy. So it's actually part of why I get up every day in the morning. And you may be wondering, by the way, who Mondelez is. It actually was created in 2012 as a result of the spin-off of the Kraft business. You have some of the snacks actually in your pack today. So we were created in 2012 by our CEO, Irene Rosenfeld. We are a $35 billion snack company. We're the #1 chocolate company in the world. We're the #1 biscuit company in the world. Anyone eaten an Oreo recently? #2 gum and candy company in the world. The #2 coffee company in the world. So my job is to create delicious moments of joy. So it made me really think about, well, why am I here? Why have I done what I've done over all of my career? And so, it was an important question for me. It made me really think. And if I think about back over my career journey, when I've sought out different roles and as I've looked at different opportunities, one of my first questions is, does this make me happy? Will I be engaged? Will I want to get up in the morning and actually do something? So, I've chosen my career really in multinational companies. That's been deliberate. I've deliberately chosen a career in multinational companies that promote employee welfare and engagement on the basis of merit, on the basis of their own performance. So I've sought out, as you've heard from my history, a number of different roles and in different companies that allowed my performance to shine, and was what I saw was an open and inclusive place to be. It was also because I wanted to travel the world. Australia is a long way away from anywhere else. So to be able to develop your career, you need to be able to say, well, I'm willing to go different places. I wanted to travel, and joining a multinational company, I believed, would help me to do that. And it certainly has. It's been 16 years now since we left Australia, and we've lived in 5 countries since. However, having lived, actually I lived in 7 countries because I grew up in Papua New Guinea when I was a small child. So I've lived in 7 countries, I've worked across 20 countries, and I've travelled in over 40 countries. And I continue to be struck by actually how more similar we are than different. And so I wanted to share really the kind of 5 things that I've learned that I hope can be of help to you and that you find that you can also identify with. 5 things that have really helped me in my journey as a leader and as a woman in business over the last 20 plus years. Number 1, I needed to know myself first. And actually you've heard a lot of that from the speakers today already. Know myself first. And that was really important because it actually helped me to be able to accept feedback about myself and to be able to actually flex my leadership style when I needed to, whether it was with a different group of people, whether it was with guys or with other people from different countries. But being able to flex my leadership style was the very first important lesson I learned. And I learned it actually a lot through the hard way from people. But also, I'm incredibly grateful for the first sales manager who sat me down and said, "You're really bad at this. Right? You're not actually identifying with your customer. You're not listening to them. You need to give them time to speak." Australians talk a lot. And so being able to get that feedback early in my career when it mattered, and I could change some of those habits and behaviours that I didn't even know I had. And for me to know myself first was really important. So that my first, encouragement would be understand who you are and also understand your strengths. And I do find often that when I speak to not just women, but I think it's particularly the case where I talk about, well, tell me about yourself, they tell me all the things that are wrong with them, all the things that we're not doing very well, rather than actually what you're really good at. And by understanding yourself and also, what drives you, what motivates you, you can identify your strengths. And that takes me on to the second thing that I've learned a lot about, and that's about building teams around me and also being part of teams that are really different. One of our values as a company is open and inclusive and inclusion. And being able to build and be part of teams that are different to me helped me learn more about myself, but also be able to get better work done. It's really encouraging to see when other people can do actually something much better than you can, and also that I can do something better than other people. As I think about the team here that I've put together here in Japan, there are a number of people in those teams who are much better than me at the jobs that they do. And that's the power of the team. And it's something I've learned more and more of, even in the 2 years I've been here in Japan. The power of that team, a diverse and inclusive team, is really huge. And I've learned a great deal about myself and about others and be able to contribute to the team. So that's the second thing, is about building diversity and actually really encourage, be part of those diverse teams. The third one is another one that you've heard as well today already. The third one is about having a strong personal network. Now that network could be both internal, it could be external. And internally, yes, sponsors and role models are incredibly important and definitely have been part of my career journey. And at the same time, having a strong internal network as well, so a strong external network, whether that could be family, it could be friends, it could be other things. My husband clearly has been my biggest supporter. My mother has been my second biggest supporter. And the rest of other family and friends who've listened to me both celebrate and also commiserate when things haven't gone so well. But having that has also helped me keep balanced and helped me to keep focused on what I wanted to do. The fourth one is about, we've also heard this a little bit today as well. It's one of my favorite quotes, and the quote is, "Manage your energy and not your time." It was first coined by Jim Lower in The Power of a Story. He worked with a number of elite athletes, and he talked about how important it was to manage your energy and not your time. Strongly recommend it. And the reason that really struck with, that's very powerful for me, is that we all have 168 hours in a week. You have it, I have it, Ambassador Kennedy has that, Barack Obama has that, the Queen only has 168 hours a week. No more and no less. How you turn up in those 160 hours is what matters, because we can't change the amount of time we have, but we can change the way we manage our own energy when we show up. And we heard Takita talk about fully on and fully off. Absolutely, because actually, in my experience, careers are not about a marathon. It's actually around a series of sprints, about being able to be full on and be absolutely at your best, and then be able to recover, relax, and then go back into it. So please manage your energy and not your time. And we hear a lot about the work-life balance and integration and things. And from my experience, you can have it all. You can have it all, but you can't have it all at the same time. Again, I'm borrowing freely from a number of people who've said that. That's not my original quote. And you can have it all, just not at the same time. And I think of life more in terms of seasons. So, for example, when I first move into a new role, it is quite challenging often to be able to, I need to be fully present at work, and I'm learning so much. So when we talk about it, when we actually look at our calendar as a family, we actually look at it in seasons. We look at it in terms of weeks. So that I think is really important. And finally, say yes to opportunities. You've heard that as well. If you know yourself and you know what you want, say yes to opportunities really early and often. That's, I found, hugely helpful. And it helps you to get out there and be known to others as well. When we first moved to India, when I first talking to my husband about moving to India, our daughter was 18 months old. And I said to him, "What do you think?" And he said to me, this is his quote, and I've carried it with me ever since. He said, "You don't build a legacy taking the comfortable jobs. You don't build a legacy taking the comfortable jobs." That was obviously hugely supportive, but it also reflected how I felt about why I was here. I'm here to be happy. I'm here to build a legacy. So my invitation for you here today is to think about what legacy will you live? What legacy will you leave? And will that legacy bring you joy? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was inspirational. So we have time now for questions. I have a couple that I have composed. I was doing some research about this presentation. One of them, I think the major theme of this conference so far is very positive and upbeat. But as I look across the audience here, and I have one of my students is actually here in class. She'll be starting her career once she graduates. Based on the research that I did, it is very likely that women who are starting their careers or early on in their careers are going to run into some kind of gender inequality issue. And the research I was reading indicated sometimes women don't want to recognize that, actually. When they see it, they want to pretend like it's not happening, but it is unfortunately out there, and Japan has its specific challenges as well. So I'd like to ask our panel, each of you, or any of you as you choose, to talk about what advice you would give to young women starting their career when they do run into challenges having to do with gender inequality.
Could I start? For young ladies, when I fresh in the company, to be honest, I didn't have very clear career vision, and I didn't try to choose the assignments because my senior, one of my mentors told me that no assignments are bad when you are young because you can learn anything from any of the jobs. So the most important thing when you are young is probably maximize the learning out of what you're currently doing. I think that's the most important thing. And don't be so, I think she said, be flexible, open up yourself. So even you think this job may not be necessarily very good for me, try it out. Don't give up before you challenge. And if you really have a problem in keep doing that job, you can speak up. But be open-minded, challenge anything, you are young, and the most important thing is maximize your learning and out of that job.
I think as I'm sitting here thinking about advice, I think that participate, and I know I said this a little bit about that, but I think especially when you're more junior on the team, I think looking for opportunities to participate in, and we often have this where we have projects where there's always some initiative that's happening, and I always call them extracurricular activities at work, but they give you an opportunity to develop a skill, to actually network and work with people you don't ordinarily work with, because I think you will encounter that, and I think what's really important is do not get discouraged. Don't let it get to you, because I always think to myself, if I let it get to you, then it winds up being me. Like I'm the one that actually kind of doomed myself. So just don't be discouraged. Take a moment and think about what can I do, recognize the feeling, and actually just think about how you can actually, it's almost like work around it. Think about how to make networks, participate, develop new skills, but certainly recognize when it's happening, but don't get discouraged.
I'm reminded of an experience early on when I was on a sales call selling ice cream, and the guy said, the account guy said, I'm not dealing with you, you're a woman. Give me your, so it does happen, yes, it does, and I'm glad to say it probably doesn't happen as much as it did, when I first started out. But I think whether it's conscious like that or unconscious, one of the things that I think that you already heard is taking that moment and saying, in the feedback I've just got, how much of that is real and how much of that is not. And there was some of that I needed to be a better negotiator, I needed to learn. On the other hand, he was, clearly, he was going to have to deal with me. Now, I had a supportive environment. My boss said, well, that's the only person you have to deal with, so you'll have to sort it out. So it did actually, you did learn a lot more about perseverance as well, and being able to stick at something for a lot longer. But it will be there, and I think of being able to say, what is the truth of this situation? Can I learn something from this? And then what do I need to do to move on?
All right, thank you very much. So another kind of advice question, and this is actually leading into the next panel, which, as you guys know, will be about men supporting women in their career growth. And since we have this tremendous number of years of experience here, different industries, different nationalities, and so forth, I think over the course of your careers, there probably have been men that have helped you in your careers. And what I'd like to ask is actually not about that so much. I would like to ask each of you what advice you'd give to the men in this audience about what they can do to help the women in their company that they may manage or may be their colleagues.
Good question. I think we talked about unconscious bias before at the beginning of the session. It's not only men. Women has unconscious biases, and men also has unconscious biases. So my request is please be conscious about unconscious biases. Everybody has that. That's the starting point. And if you think that way, probably you can be more open for different opinions, we don't have to stick with men and women. We have even more diversities, nationalities, and junior versus senior, old and young, different background. All of these are diversity, not only men and women. But all of us have to be very open to different opinions to create something that one cannot think of, right? We work together as one team to create something new. So you probably, if you are conscious about unconscious bias, you can probably drive that inclusion culture more. That's how I think.
I think I have two things. One, I'd say for men, if when you recognize it happening, I think with a peer, let's say you have a peer, and there's just some bias happening, or there's just, you're not seeing like fairness playing out, if you can call it out to your peer. Because I think that can be tricky as a woman to attempt to do that, but I think it's almost coming from you actually might be more open to hearing it. That's one thing. And I think the second thing, when managing women, I think it's also a recognition of that. I hate to think about it as managing men and women, but just to know people. People all have different ways they respond. They have different ways they receive communication. They have different ways they receive feedback. But just being flexible in terms of how you manage your team without thinking about it men versus women. I think it's also the same about developing the talent and thinking about sometimes you may have to use some different skills to develop talent, whether they're male or female, but just knowing that it's probably different people in general and not necessarily about the gender.
I think my number one piece of advice for the guys in the room would be to not make assumptions. I think assumptions actually about anything to do with that particular woman's career. Let me give you an example. I had we recently went through a major, huge global transformation where we moved everything to like a P&G model. We had a lot of people who were being in new jobs. We had 1,000 people in Asia Pacific in a new role. One of them was in my team, and we identified someone who was actually just about to go on maternity leave. Her name, she was on the list and whatever else. By the time I saw the final list, it had gone. I said, "Where's this person?" And they went, "Well, she's going on maternity leave, so we assume she doesn't want the job." When we actually contacted her, she actually did want the job, and she's starting next week. So I think that my huge encouragement to the men in the room and to all of us as leaders is to not make an assumption about the other person on the other side of the table, is to ask them and ask them again and ask them again what they would really like to do with their lives.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting. I've been given strict instructions to end on time, and I've been living in Japan a long time, so I know about ending on time. But we do have time for maybe one question. If there's someone who has a burning question that they'd like to ask of our three speakers. Anyone? Oh, okay. Marianne over here. So one question only. We need to keep it short, but you're the lucky winner. I admire, you followed the advice. She took the initiative, right? Very good, please.
Thank you very much. So I'm so lucky, girl. And then, thank you so much for giving us such a great opportunity to ask them. And then, so I learned over the story that special women leaders about we can have it all, but so no at the same time. So such as the similar concept that you guys all said. And then my biggest question is so I'm also the working mom. I have two daughters. Youngest is 2 years old, and then the elder one is already 7 years old. Then, so I am facing some difficult situations. You can easily understand. But so that for long times, we can kind of so that we have to make we have to select what is the biggest priority in the short term. But so that for long term, so we tend to lose our thinking is that what is the priority at that time. Maybe that we can focus on this task at this moment, but so that after that we can move to the next priority. And then I would like to know that your experience. What's the sort of maybe the milestone when you have a change of the priority or something like that? How you can adjust or choose something priority.
Thank you for a question. Um, Again, I think it really depends on what's the most important things in your life. You have to be clear what's most important things for your life. If you are clear about that, you can make choices around that. That's first thing. But I am also working mom with two girls, and probably before marriage, after having children, and when children are younger, when children gets bigger, maybe four chunks stages in life. And throughout the life stages, my priority was to work, and I wanted to work, continue working, but I didn't want to give up my family. I didn't want to give up my work for my family. So I really wanted to maintain both. That was my priority. So all the choices or decisions I made was around how I maintain both. So that's my thinking. So I didn't have any choice. Do I quit the company or do I prioritize my family, sacrificing my work? That was not my choice. So, but if I think that way, I can be very creative in getting the supports I need from my family, from my company, even from my children. So, if you are clear about what you are what are the priorities are for your life, and again, don't be caught by the values that the other people established. We have a lot of established values. Mom has to be like this, working woman has to be like that. Don't worry about those. Don't be caught by those. That's not your values. You have to create your own value, and you have to define what happiness means to you. That's how I feel. Did I answer your question?
One thing I was going to say is I think technology today allows us to be a whole lot more flexible than it did 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I also think as leaders, especially at senior leaders, I think it's really our job to really kind of be the ones that are actually stating that fact. Is that, and I look at this and I tell people I work with today is that, you know, we have to be highly flexible to adapt to things that happen in our lives. I know we're talking about children, but we also have parents who may need to care for, and there may be something where this morning I can't get in until 10. That's fine, you're available by email. I mean, there's just so much connection, we're so much more connected. I mean, I think we're working in global companies that honestly, like my boss, he's in New York, so he doesn't get up till, I don't start communicating with him until 10 p.m. But that's my choice also, is that it's just, technology I think just allows us to be a lot more interconnected, and honestly it has helped me personally to prioritize, and to me it's almost balance more than prioritization, to balance work and home and family, and hopefully the same thing for people on my team and our company as well, because I think flexibility is going to be the key, I think honestly, to growth, as well as you think about business growth, as well as I think personal growth, and retention for employees, because I think if you can it's so stressful to think that you don't have flexibility. So I think by adding flexibility, I think there's a lot of benefit that comes with it.
Marianne, one more okay? I got to talk to the boss here.
One question, one answer.
Okay, does anyone else have one very quick question? Okay.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to ask a question. Okay, actually my question is similar to what Professor asked, but I want to have a more specific answer to the question. Okay, I think three of you talked about the support from others, but my question is specifically about support from your husband or partner, because my question is how was your husband helpful for you to really succeed in your career? And let me be a little more specific in my question. My question is actually, I'm not really looking for like some basics, like splitting household work or like childcare, because those things we can do, and we know it, and we can learn from textbook. But probably, I'm looking for more personal thing. So for example, maybe how, so for example, you talked about like taking assumption biases, but that's not really actionable for us. Actually, because I understand it, but it's very difficult to take an action. So what's the specific example, or what was the biggest help your husband provided to you to help you succeed in your career?
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'll take that one. Oh, and afterwards, let's have a chat about assumptions. Got some really great practical advice for you there. My husband, practically, yes, we do. We do split the home shift. So the home things are split in terms of who cares. He's the primary carer for our daughter. I organise holidays. We do actually agree. The other thing too is actually, just simple things like sitting down and looking at the calendar together, and being able to work through seasons, because there are seasons when I am traveling. I travel about 50% of the time. So let's look at that season. What does that mean? And then when I'm home, what does that season look like? How can we help each other find some time for our own energy and for our own things to do? The other thing, too, that he does very practically is he asks me how my day went. So we talk about it, and we talk about my work over the dinner table. So we talk about that, and the other thing we do is that we always have dinner together. If I'm not traveling, I always leave the office at 5:30, 6 o'clock at the latest, and we have dinner together as a family. That's a really powerful ritual for us, and he insists on it.
Well, with that very positive note, I think we'll end this session. Please give a very warm round of applause for our guest speakers, Tagaki-san, Ms. Nolan, and Ms. Kutz. Yeah, thank you. I've learned a tremendous amount. I'll be taking this back into my classroom to talk to my female students as well.